Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. As you all come in, please enter your contact information in the chat so you will know the company that you're with and your name. During the process, we also ask that you put your questions in the chat as well, because that's how we will be able to filter through those. So good to see so many familiar faces and new faces. And all right. Well, my name is Patricia McKinney, and I serve as project manager of programming here at the Greater Memphis Chamber. So welcome, welcome, welcome. This is our first Women's Business Council event since the pandemic, with juggling, the juggling act of homeschooling and virtual working and caregiving and everything in between. Our ladies of the council really needed a pause, and today marks a brand new beginning. We are super excited to have two dynamic women leading our Women's Business Council this year as co-chairs. We have Paige Walker, and she is the managing director and owner of CASA Public Strategy. We asked Paige what she would like to do to help Mid-South women grow. And one thing that she shared is that she would like to make sure that we know that it's critical that we encourage women across industries and job types to mentor young women entering into the workforce. And amen to that, Paige. Co-chairing with Paige is Candace Stewart, and she is senior director, and she's the senior director of external affairs and business operations with the Memphis Grizzlies. Go Grizzlies. When we asked Candace the same question, Candace said that she would like to help Mid-South women grow by creating opportunities for them to grow their network. And we all know that growing our network is very important and critical. So we are very fortunate to have Paige and Candace at the helm of our Women's Business Council. Paige and Candace, could you turn on your mics and wave at us for a second? And I know that we're going to hear from you a little bit later.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
And we still have some people coming on. So right now, Paige and Candace, I'm just going to go ahead and let you guys give some remarks and greetings to everyone.
Sure. I'm very excited that we're all able to convene today and to kick this back off again with the Women's Business Council. So we recognize so much has changed since the last time we were all together, and we've spent some very purposeful time talking to colleagues and women that have participated in the council before. And we've really tried to select programming based on your feedback that we hope resonates, and that this first session is useful, and that next time we'll be able to see each other in person. I think our next session is in June. Patricia can kick me or correct me if I'm wrong on that. But thank you again so much for joining us, and to our sponsor, Independent Bank, and the whole chamber team for everything they've done to help drive this forward.
And echoing Paige, just wanted to say thank you all for participating today. We're really excited about getting started again, and what the possibilities are for any of our future events. Some of you might have received that survey that Paige mentioned with the information, the questions that we had for you. And thank you for taking the time to do that. And we're hopeful that we're able to get more information. I'm going to, at some point, put my contact information in the chat. So if you have suggestions about things, topics that you want to hear, if you want to do things in person, if this virtual setting is still good for you, feel free to reach out to us and let us know. We definitely look forward to hearing from you about the direction of our future events. So looking forward to hearing the conversations today, and I think we're still waiting on a couple of people to join on, and I'll let Patricia take it over again.
All right, thank you to our co-chairs, and wanted to remind you all, please do put your information in the chat. What's the company that you're with? Your name, your contact information. We would love to just see that come across as we, even as we go through the questions as well, once our program gets in full gear. So while we're thanking everyone, we want to thank Independent Bank for supporting the Women's Business Council. And here with us is Casey Metcalf. She is Senior Vice President with iBank, but she is also here with her partner. Is that Jennings? And your last name, I'm not seeing that.
Jennings Barnes.
Jennings Barnes, thank you so much. And now I see it. And you all can just share a little bit about what's going on with Independent Bank. And thank you for being here.
Great, thanks for having us. Good afternoon. Independent Bank is proud to sponsor the Women's Business Council. As you probably know, we are a Memphis-based bank, co-founded and operated by Susan Stevenson, and we enthusiastically support women. And to let you know something new about iBank, we just rolled out our new residential construction department that was created by women and run by women, myself and Jennings Barnes.
So if you or someone you know is interested in building a new home or renovating or adding on to an existing home, we'd love to be able to finance it for you. We'll drop our contact information in the chat. And if you have any questions or a referral or anything, just please feel free to email or call us. And we hope that you guys enjoy the program today.
Thank you all so much. And Paige, tossing it over to you.
Sure thing. Thanks, Patricia. Well, I'm very excited and honored to be able to introduce our moderator today, who is Amity Shuler. And Amity is the Senior Vice President of Workforce Development at the Greater Memphis Chamber. And she brings over 20 years of experience in strategic thinking, innovation, and education policy to this discussion. And she's really spent her whole career working across sectors to identify common needs and to remove barriers. And I can't really think of a better person to be able to facilitate this discussion today and to really engage our panelists to, elicit the most beneficial information that we all need around this topic. So Amity, I'll turn it over to you and let you get our panelists rolling.
Thank you, Paige, so much. So ladies, it's so great to see all of you virtually, and I see you all saying hello in the chat. I just love the energy on this rainy, cold day. Former Floridian, by the way, so winters are still a little bit of a shock to me, but I'm getting used to that. So we're going to be talking a little bit today around navigating through your workforce virtually, and we're going to touch on the hiring process and the interview process primarily. And we might be able to unpack some onboarding issues as well. We could probably talk all day about how life has changed with virtual work, but we're really going to focus on those three buckets: hiring, the interview, and onboarding. And here's the reality. We know that before the pandemic, we were all using virtual spaces to supplement our recruitment, right? To help us find the right talent, to vet talent before we flew them in or asked them to travel for their interview. And then here comes COVID-19 and it shut us all down. And all of a sudden, the virtual space became the space for everything: working, networking, socializing, holidays, and definitely hiring and interviewing talent for a lot of your work that was still moving and still required the best talent to get the job done. Now, has it added value? Has it taken away value? What have been the challenges? What have been the successes? I think each of us as women especially could probably write our own books on that. But if you are the HR manager, or if you are the candidate, or if you are the CEO, and we're going to persist in this virtual world, we know that after 18 months of pandemic life, moving to 2 years actually, we have some best practices and we've learned some things. So what better way to share what's been learned than to introduce our panelists for today? If you could turn on your cameras, ladies. Dotty, I will start with you. Would you please introduce yourself and say hello?
Thanks, Amity, and hello, everybody. Happy afternoon. I'm Dotty Summerfield Giusti. I'm president of Summerfield Associates, a female-owned and certified local recruiting and consulting service. Been in business for over 30 years, and it is also my pleasure to co-chair with Patricia the Small Business Council for the Chamber. So good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you, Dotty. Christine, would you say hello to the crowd today?
Of course. Greetings, everyone. I'm so honored to be here. I serve at Transnetyx, which is a biotechnology company here in Memphis, Tennessee. I've been privileged to be a part of the team for 10 years, and I serve our employee experience talent management team. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. And Cynthia, would you say hello, please?
Yes, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I am editor and publisher of HR Professionals Magazine here in Memphis. We started out in Memphis as HR Professionals Magazine of Greater Memphis, and we are now in 9 southeastern states. And we have a readership of about 40,000. And our magazine is all about anything and everything to do with human resource professionals. So go to our website, hrprofessionals.com, and check it out. Thank you for inviting me here today.
Thank you, Cynthia. All right, so like I said, we're going to start with the interview. So this is my 5th virtual meeting of the day today, and I know that many of you are having that exact same experience. And I never feel like my best self in the virtual space. I like to talk with my hands. I'm a big context learner, so I like to see the verbal cues and the body language. And a lot of that changes in the virtual world. So I always kind of feel off kilter. And I joke with people that if I had to interview for a job today virtually, I would never get hired. I would be unemployed for I don't know how long, because it just still it's not comfortable for me. So when we talk about from the employer's perspective, thinking about going through your hiring run of show, and you're leading up to that interview and you're down to your 3 or 5 final candidates, what is the employer to do to make those candidates feel comfortable and show up as their best self in a space that they might not feel like their best self in? Practical tips. Christine, could you kick us off?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Thank you, Amity. Well, 2 things, I think. One is that we're partnering with our candidates, with our talent, right? So I think as best as possible, we set them up for success by sharing the information that we know is important for them to be successful in the interview. The second thing is also doing something similar with our team, making sure that they have all the information that would be helpful for them to ask better questions in the interview. Our team has provided our interview panelists and team members, as well as hiring managers, with an interview guide. And if you'd like to know more about that, please feel free to reach out. But the interview guide for us really does focus on the values of the organization. Because typically if someone's already made it to that point, Amity, they have the technical skill. At this point, it's more about the relationship and learning about one another to learn if they are going to be a good value add to the company. I hope that helps.
Yes, that does. So let's talk about value add, Dotty. You are in a virtual space. Christine just mentioned an environment where now you are the employer and you're using a panel interview with a candidate. What are some of the other things that you're saying to the panel participants in the virtual space, Dotty, to make sure that they're pulling out the best version of that candidate?
I think the one thing to remember when we talk about especially virtual interviews, it's taken the place of that first face-to-face interview inside a company. And it's no different. It's difficult enough when you're sitting 5 or 6 people around a conference table to know who's going to speak and who's going to ask the next question and how to couch those questions. In a virtual interview, your people may be scattered from one corner of the country to the other, as opposed to sitting in a conference room. And again, I think like Christine said, it's just great, proper planning on the first. You almost have to do what we do for meetings like this and have a run of show. We're going to start at 12 o'clock, and at 12:03, Amity's going to ask the first question. And then the next, my camera just went off, I'm sorry. And the other thing is being prepared with the technology that we have in front of us. Some people use Teams, some using WebEx, some are using Zoom. And depending on where you are, will my camera, will my phone, will my technology work? And you need to practice that so that those on the employer side come across in a very cohesive manner, that it is seamless and smooth.
That's great advice, Dotty. Speaking of those panel interviews, I remember an interview one time, there were 9 people at a conference table. It sort of felt more like the firing squad than the interview. And panel interviews are great because they help, they help level set, there's different perceptions. You are looking for a great fit. To Christine's point, they've already met the basic competencies. Now it's, are you going to be a good fit for the team? But big panel interviews feel sort of burdensome in this virtual space. Cynthia, do you recommend that you keep the panels large in the virtual space? Or if you reduce them, what do you think is the magic number for a panel interview in the virtual space?
I recommend 3 people at most. It's overwhelming enough sitting in front of, as you say, the firing squad. But the 3 people whose influence is greatest in the job, who are you going to be working with? It's important you meet those people. Obviously, personalities matter. And right away, we can see someone's personality. But when you've got even this large of a panel, it gets a little confusing. Who are these people and what department are they in? Will I be working with them? What level are they? That's so important. You get your first glimpse of the company culture in the panel interview, and the culture is everything. And if they don't like what they're hearing, that's a huge turnoff. There's so many jobs out there, so you got to give your best impression first.
That's right. It is like a first date, the interview, is it not? Everybody's dating each other in that first interview.
That's right.
You're looking to see if you want to hold their hand, and they're looking to see if they want to hold yours.
That's right.
So we get to the interview space, and I know that we've all had this experience during the course of our virtual work life. You think that you have a great candidate. You know you've picked a great candidate, or you screened a few out. You are all teed up for the interview. There's been pre-activities. They're ready with their technology. Everybody knows what the expectations are. And it's just a bad connection. Or the dog is going crazy because somebody rang the doorbell. Or, the blurriness, the camera won't work. What kind of grace do you extend as an employer when you are down to your final 3? You believe that you have the best one on paper, and everything goes wrong during the interview that can go wrong in a virtual meeting. And we all know what those things are. Do you score them? Do you reschedule? Do you give them a second chance when you have 2 other candidates to go? Christine, kick us off with that.
That's a great question. And you're exactly right. We are going to experience that. I mean, raise your hand if you have. So in those moments, my belief is that, again, it's our duty and our honor to set everyone up for success. So in that time, to be flexible and to say, listen, it looks like your power is out, or you didn't quite make it to where you needed to be before the interview for you to feel comfortable. Let's go ahead and reschedule. Now, I do recognize that there's other people involved. And so you do want to give that option to a person, I believe. I think that's the best practice and way to go about it. Secondly, we could also ahead of time, just let them know, like Dotty mentioned, and you also, this is what to expect. These are the people involved. This is the time in which we're going to start. And these are the people that you're going to meet. Again, it's up to the person also to put their best foot forward and to set themselves up for success. But in moments like that, where it's outside of their control, like the power outage a few weeks ago, we rescheduled interviews just during that time.
That's great advice. Okay, so let's talk about conveying culture during the interview as the employer. If you're going to a person-to-person interview, you walk into a building, there's an aesthetic, there's a feel, you get offered a bottle of water, you don't, the bathroom's clean, the bathroom's not clean. People seem happy, they don't seem happy, the desks are messy, the desks are clean. I mean, you just learn so much about an organization's culture from the time you walk in the door to the time you sit in the interview room. And now all of that is gone in the virtual space. Dotty, what are some ways that an organization can really call out and showcase their culture when that aesthetic is now missing?
I think what a candidate's going to notice, the dead plants in the corner or the pretty flag behind them, the most important thing that they're going to see is the interplay between the people that they're speaking with. Do they speak with one voice? HR people like Christine hate it when I tell a candidate to ask this question: what is it that you can expect for me to accomplish in the first 6 months, and I'm going to be the most successful person in the job? Well, if you're sitting and you're talking to 5 or 6 people and you get 5 or 6 disparate answers, you know they're not on the same page, which means the culture probably has not flowed properly through the company. And I think the interplay between the interviewers, especially in a digital setting, I've got a blurred background. You don't, Christine. I can see with the painting in the back of our office, and it's very calm and it's comfortable. But in a virtual interview, it's just as important to listen and be attuned to hear not just what they're saying, but how they're saying it. What's the emphasis? What are they leaning on? What do they think is going to be success? And I think those are questions and those answers that come out in that virtual interview.
Gotcha. And sometimes maybe more telling. So if in a physical world, you're so concerned with the aesthetic, you might not notice the dissonance between what's being said. Whereas in the virtual space, you can at least really tune into what's being said and does it reflect the one voice culture. Cynthia, would you like to add anything to that? How does an employer convey good culture through a virtual interview?
Well, it's very important for that applicant to get an idea of a realistic job preview. I think it's a good idea for each person on the panel to let the applicant know their expectations. And also it gives that applicant a chance to look at the leadership styles of each person. Mm-hmm. The way they answer those questions lets them know. Of course, you're looking for a coaching environment. So we don't want anyone who is an authoritative figure on that panel that is a turnoff to someone new. So a realistic job preview is so important because right away they can tell whether they want to work with that person or not. There are keywords that they say, and of course the way that they act during the interview says a lot about them as well.
Goes back to that first date mentality, right?
That's right.
Put your best foot forward. All right, let's flip the script a little bit. Now let's talk about the employee that's coming to the virtual space for the interview. So nerve-wracking. Again, I am convinced that nobody would hire me, so it's a good thing that I am very happy and loving life at the Greater Memphis Chamber. But it's going to happen. I mean, the reality is there's been a lot of mobility in the workplace. People have switched jobs more than ever before in these last 2 years, and employers are still hiring. If I'm an employee, what are some of the things that I need to be mindful of when I show up to a virtual interview? And there's so much that we can go there with, right? Because we're talking dress, physical appearance, camera angle, background. Where do we want to start, Dotty? What do you think is the most important from that list I just rambled off? And we'll just work our way down.
You just slid them all into one big lump. Let's start with technology. The same thing for companies. If a company says, we're going to do a Teams interview at 10 o'clock in the morning, then 10 o'clock the day before, you better try to get onto Teams. And if you can't, you call your 14-year-old kid into the room and say, you can put Teams on my computer. I know that you can fix this for me. But be ready. Technologically be ready. Does my camera work with this? Can you hear my sound? Test it out. And when I say at 10 o'clock the next morning, that's a crazy kind of a thing, but I helped a pretty senior level person through this interview process not too long ago. And we interviewed the day before at the exact time his interview was. So he could see that the light coming in from the dining room window was reflecting off a picture and hitting him in the face. So he had to change the light in the room. Take a look. What do you look like in the place that you're going to be interviewing? And yes, have someone take the dog outside. Don't let the doorbell ring. Put yourself in a closet if you have to with the desk and blur the background, but you should be the only thing that that interviewer sees. If I turn off my virtual background, you can see all the files stacked up on my desk behind me, which is probably not good for an interview. Ladies, for women, makeup is very different in an interview. It is very different in front of a camera. What looks good in your bathroom mirror is probably not going to look great in front of the camera. Be careful. We all know you only get one chance to make a good first impression. It's the same thing on an interview. Dress like you're going for a face-to-face interview. Watch what you say and when you say it, and try not to interrupt. On our screen, you can see that I'm talking because there's a little bright box around my frame. And you'll need to pause, and if someone else wants to speak, hush and listen. The other thing to do and to be prepared. All of us have access to technology, and before you have that virtual interview, Christine is going to send you a list of every person that's going to be on that call. Get busy. Look them up. Know what they do. Know what their job title is. Know what their background is. Find out, oh my gosh, he went to the same college that I did. It may be 15 years apart, but we can talk about going to Alabama together. Do your research and do it now. That's going to make a candidate stand out. Thank you.
That's great. Christine, let's talk about camera angles. I know that sounds crazy, but putting your best foot forward, just in terms of camera position, camera angles, we've all had some awkward moments over these last 2 years with our camera angles for sure. What do you recommend, or what are you seeing as you do your interviews that's working really well for candidates?
Well, what's working well is practice. Exactly what Dotty said. Do exactly what you're going to do on the day of your interview. And the time of day is brilliant because of lighting, certainly, but a number of other things. When I'm thinking about camera angles, you really do want to look to what is best suitable for you. I'm a little under 5'4". So right now I'm actually standing at my desk. I have a standing desk. So I did need to reposition my camera just slightly. And I think doing that in advance is going to set you up where you can feel more confident as a candidate. Also, the lighting. Again, windows and natural lighting is wonderful, but shadows on your face, not always. So I think making sure that you have proper lighting, you can actually off of Amazon, not promoting necessarily Amazon, but you can buy a ring light, a small ring light that you can put on your laptop or on your monitor that will give you a much better opportunity to present yourself well in a well-lit space.
That's great. That's great. Do you recommend, Cynthia, you can turn off the self view in Zoom and Teams and other platforms. Do you think it's a plus or a minus for an individual to be able to see themselves on camera as they're talking?
I think it's a plus, definitely.
Okay.
Because you can definitely see what the other person is seeing. Yeah, okay. I highly recommend that. I also recommend, just adding to something Dotty said, that you do a practice run with friends or someone in the family who'll be honest with you during that time and say, hey, this is not the good angle for you. You need to do this. Or, yeah, this lighting is not good for you. Okay, don't wear that color tomorrow. It doesn't look good on you. Things like that are just, women especially are good at sharing information like this. So I would get my best friend to do a practice run.
That's great advice. Okay, so you've hired your candidate through this virtual space. You still haven't met them, and you're probably not going to meet them for whatever reason. You've gone all remote. You've gotten rid of your bricks and mortar. It was a virtual job anyway, or it's going to be hybrid, and it's going to be a while before you see them. And yet you want to maintain organizational culture, and you want that employee to have a good onboarding experience. We know that the onboarding experience is really an important predictor to how well the employee does in those first 60, 90 days, and then the 6 months, and even if they stick for a year or more, right? So how do we onboard in a virtual space, get to know our colleagues, get to know our peers, make sure that an employee is thriving when there's no water cooler talk or passing in the hallway? This is such a big topic, it almost deserves its own conversation in a separate panel. But let's just start with the basics of introducing a new employee to a team and the team's culture. Christine, where do we start?
Well, I think we do exactly what we've done before, but we're creative and we're executing it a little differently. So with onboarding, it actually happens before their first day. We have a day one experience, but even before our first day, we have an onboarding team that engages the hiring manager as well as team members from the team that the new employee will be on. And we're setting up meet and greets and opportunities to connect prior to their first day if they would like. But on day one, we have an entire agenda, which allows them to not only meet with our HR team to make sure they have the benefits and all the paperwork and everything completed, but also with our technology team. Our IT support team meets the first thing with every single new employee, sometimes even the day before, to make sure they're set up for success on their first day. What I was thinking about when you mentioned just that whole experience, Amity, is it really is about doing what we've already been doing, but we're very intentional about the way we do it now. And to have a plan is key for employers that maybe, I think about the small businesses that we serve at Memphis Chamber. And, many of these companies may not hire frequently, but even one hire a year is worth the time to prepare and make sure you have the best experience possible for that new employee onboarding.
Great. Dotty, I'm a new employee and I really want to integrate well into the organizational culture. I believe that I have a responsibility as well to my own successful onboarding. What are some of the things that I can do in the virtual space to have a similar experience as if I were in the building, walking halls, in the kitchen, at the water cooler?
Well, hopefully, after my wonderful onboarding experience, I probably have been paired up with somebody, whether it's going to be a mentor or my buddy, to help me through the first couple of 3 months. Someone that I know that I'm not afraid to ask anything to. And that's going to be critical. I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from one of my VPs a jillion years ago was, the only stupid question is the one you don't ask. And I think in those first 2 or 3 months, a new employee just needs to be like a 3-year-old and just keep asking appropriate questions. It's not like, where's the bathroom and where's I take the right turn out of the building to get the subway. It's, who do I need to talk to? Who's the most important person? If I'm working on this project, who's going to be the person that I really need to get inside their brain? And I think that you're going to begin to figure out the culture. In the beginning, someone is going to tell you how your manager likes to get information. And if you don't know that, and if somebody doesn't tell you that, you probably need to ask, Christine, how do you like to get information from me? Do you want me to send you an email? Do you want me to send you a text? Do you want me to call you? Let me just go knock on your door that's always open. And find out those questions. You're not going to virtually be able to knock on their door. How do I give my manager the information they want? What form do they want to see it in? And then you're going to have to ask your buddy as many questions as you can to start to get the lay of the land that you never touch.
Great advice. Cynthia, advice for employers about creating that onboarding experience and, getting through those first 30 days and into the second and third month. What does onboarding look like to make sure that those employees that are working virtual are thriving in the organization?
First of all, I think that it's a great idea to have a person-to-person meeting. Okay, you're going to be a remote worker. I get that. But there's nothing wrong with having a lunch or a meeting for coffee somewhere. Working 100% remote is not really the best way to go. And I'm not saying that from my viewpoint so much as Sherm's CEO, Johnny C. Taylor, says. He does not believe in 100% remote work. We need that contact. We need that connection with the people we work with. That's part of our culture. If you only see people online and virtually, it's a lonely world. I think that it's a great practice to set up a meeting, if only for once a week somewhere, maybe once every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever your culture allows for. But try to actually meet people and connect in person at some point. Being 100% online, you can't. It's really difficult to build relationships that way. And it's all about relationships.
That's a great point. Yeah, absolutely. I know that I love it when I see my chamber colleagues out and about as well, because we spend a lot of time in virtual meetings. And sometimes we're physically in the building together, but we're still in virtual meetings with other people. And so just to have the interaction of stepping outside into a hallway or even running into each other at the grocery store really does something for the endorphins and reminds you that you're connected to something much larger. So going into the virtual workspace, I want to shift gears for just a second. Your employee is onboarded, you are a leader, you're a manager, you're having meetings, you're working through projects, you need the best thinking. And because of different work styles and personalities and dispositions, conversations always have the person who is the loudest, the person who is the quietest. But in a virtual space, I'm always feeling like we need to be very intentional to make sure that everybody has a voice and they don't get marginalized in this virtual space more than what might have happened in person. And what I mean is, we already know that women can be marginalized in a group setting or in the workplace. We know that women of color may struggle or have to really, elbow to the table to stay at the table and be heard and seen. We're fighting against those disparities and inequities all of the time when we were in person, and now we are virtual and remote and looking at each other. As a hiring manager or a leader, what are some of the things that you can do, Christine, to make sure that everybody is getting their voice?
That's a great point, Amity. And there's a couple of things that come to mind for me, and it starts in the room of leadership. Well, we're all leaders, but especially with the CEO and with folks who are at the level of making decisions for the entire organization. And I think to be unified, to agree that there is a disparity and that we are being intentional to work toward, better practices for our people and our team members and the community. It's to have a plan. It's to talk about what's important and when, and to allow opportunities in meetings and to be structured that way, where we are setting up opportunities where we're asking questions, what do you think? What are your thoughts about that? And leaving it open. Silence is hard for a lot of folks, but actually being quiet to listen is going to be key. Additionally, I believe that the managers among the teams are also responsible in that, to be sure that their team members are being heard, or if they've heard something outside of the meeting and they bring it into the meeting and just say, oh, Amity actually had an idea about that. Would you mind sharing? Giving a heads up in advance is always helpful to that person if you plan to bring it up. But engagement and intentionality really are the key success factors.
I love that word intentionality. And it goes back to, that would be the time where we would be relying more on body cues and body language. You can very frequently see that somebody's got something to say, or because you could see everybody in the same room, you're more attuned to the fact that they have not said anything. And you can kind of create the safe space for them to have their voice, to share and to provide input. And so in the virtual space, without that intentionality, it could be much more difficult. Dotty, what else would you add to that?
So my company is small. There are only 5 of us, which probably puts me in the size that many of the ladies, of the attendees are in. And I physically have been back inside my office 3 times since March 2020. That's it. We have gotten together face-to-face as a group once over Christmas lunch, a very long and joyous Christmas lunch. We get together 3 times a week as a team, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at a certain time to go everything. But I have made it my point to talk to everybody else every week, even if it's for 5 minutes, just me and them. What'd you cook for dinner last night? Where are you going Saturday night? Has nothing to do with business. Just so I can hear how they are. I mean, we're a very small team. And normally I'd walk up and down the hall 6 or 8 times a day. I'd plunk
Right.
myself down in your office and say, what'd you have for
Right.
lunch? Where are you going for tomorrow? Just to listen and to hear. And I think as managers or leaders in a virtual environment, we have to listen more to what our people are saying, or simply, as Christine said, not saying. And it's the quiet ones that really scare us because they've gone inside themselves. And we know the pressures that being alone and being in a virtual environment is playing on everybody. We can't be the cheerful cuckoo all the time because it's hitting us all too. But we need to listen and not be afraid to say, I know you had a rough week. Don't worry about it. Don't call in tomorrow. Go do something fun for yourself. And we've just got to listen a lot more than we ever have before.
Dotty, you make such a great point about mental health and well-being in this virtual space. 2 very hard years. We really don't know what people have been through in these last 2 years, particularly if you're remote workers or you're new to an organization. Cynthia, how are some ways that employers and hiring managers can do just check-ins and pulse checks to make sure that their employees are doing okay and have the resources that they need if they're not?
I love everything Dottie said. It's so true. Just piggybacking, excuse me, on that, I think we as leaders have to be aware of everyone who's within your realm, so to speak. Anyone you work with, just try to think about how can I help this person today? Because all of us have family issues going on. Some people have financial issues going on. Some people have personal illnesses they're dealing with that we don't know anything about. Just take the time to think about everybody on your team and ask them, what do you need? What can I do to help you? Forget about the job right now. You, the person, how can I help you? It will make a great impression on them, and it also will kind of make you feel good.
No, I love that. Christine, do you think we've lost some of that in this virtual space? Because sometimes that's what happens in the hallway, in the elevator, after the meeting, walking to and from a location. Do you think we've lost some of that? And if so, what's the risk in losing that?
Incredible question, truly. And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to lose sight of the advantages that we have now. Because whereas we easily walked down the hallways, grabbed folks in the break room or caught up, maybe for an after hour, a happy hour after work or something like that, or breakfast. What we're required to do now takes a lot more energy and effort.
Oh.
An enormous amount of intentionality, going back to that word.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think it's really challenged us as leaders and as business owners to think about what is it that's important to my team. Cynthia made a great point that, based on evidence and what Johnny Taylor has shared, that remote workforce continuing is a challenge. He's absolutely right. It is a challenge, but I don't want to lose sight of the advantages that we have through remote working. We are meeting the needs of some team members' mental health and well-being because of the remote work options. And we don't want to diminish that because people have found better balance and abilities for their commitments outside of work. And that's just as important. And that's thinking about the whole person. So the answer is yes, it's harder, but it's worth it to figure some of those things out. And that's why a great resource like the Women's Business Council and the Memphis Chamber, we're here because we want to connect you with people that have ideas that you don't have to come up with it on your own, but you can take the ideas and make it work for your team and the folks who you have the privilege of serving.
That's such a great answer. And again, going back to that word of intentionality, and I love the way that you said we can't lose sight of all the good things about being able to navigate this virtual space, whether it's working, collaborating, hiring, visiting, onboarding, whatever it is. There are some really great things that have come out of this virtual, the cadence of work. I'm going off script here. So for all of you that are with us today, if there's a little pregnant pause, it's because we didn't tee up for this. But I think this is a great opportunity to think about, if you have to look back on the last 2 years of your virtual experience in your individual roles, like what are some of the aha moments, or, oh, that's so great, I never want to lose it again. Like, I don't want to go back to normal. It's so good. I'm going to give you just a minute to think about that.
I'm going to jump in real quickly because what we fail to talk about in this whole virtual world is the ability to tap into talent who doesn't live in our metropolitan area. And I look at some of my clients that I have dealt with for 30 years and say, I'm never going to hire anybody that can't live and breathe in Memphis. Well, all of a sudden they've got their HR director who's in Tupelo, or their vice president of manufacturing who's in Omaha. And it's working because talent is transferable, and people are hiring and expanding that they never thought they could. And by doing that, you're bringing a whole bunch of new thoughts and ideas, and yes, personality. And it is changing the workforce in some places immensely better. Personally, for me, I'm old, and this technology has been fun. I mean, I don't like doing a Zoom call in the car on my phone when we're driving to Atlanta, but I figured out how to do it, and it's okay, as long as I don't pass that one cell tower in Tupelo that knocks me off every time. But we know that, and it's been exciting. I don't know, like the rest of you, I lived with my office in my dining room for the first year and a half, and finally decided I'm having company in 3 months. I got to change that. And I've used this study that I've never been in my life in my house. So it's been fun. It's been fun to watch my staff enjoy being able to be very comfortable with each other. I mean, there are times, and I know I'm silly, and I will tell them, next Wednesday, wear your red pajamas. And they do what? We wear red pajamas when we have our staff meeting. I don't, that's right. We have to break it, because sometimes sitting there alone in your study is not fun all the time, and we have to do something silly. And I love finding something silly to do. If you talk to
I love that, Dotty. That's a great point around things that you don't want to go, but the advantage and the talent pool that has opened up, because if you hadn't figured out this virtual work, now everybody has. And so it's just a much deeper pool with a lot more opportunity. And so I could understand a hiring manager never wanting to go back to having to just hire within a zip code again. Christine, and then Cynthia, you're up next. Just great things that have come out of this that you don't want to go back to normal. The way it used to be, I should say, the new normal.
Sure. Yeah, it's all normal. It's all relative.
That's right.
Thinking about the extra effort, the intentional creativity of ideas on engaging people outside of the office, don't want to ever lose that learning opportunity. And thinking about, we had folks on our teams, we've all heard this, fixed mindset versus growth mindset. There is a mentality around what is more challenging, but what we've been able to do successfully, and I'm proud of our team to, step into it and lean into it really deliberately, is to think creatively how to engage people when they're not in the office. Again, many of our folks, now when I started the company, it was a lot smaller and we've grown significantly. So I have the advantage of knowing both sides of that, what it's like with 10 people versus now over 200 people. But with that in mind, I would not want to go back to a point where we didn't better engage the folks who did not work in the office. We do that so much better now. And to Dottie's point about technology, we thought we did it pretty well. And I would say for an automated biotech company, we did. but boy, did we have a little bit of a learning opportunity there too, to make sure that we did it well and effectively, not just did it. So wouldn't want to go back with the way that we can engage with people in a really effective way now that we wouldn't have known before until we had the challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. Cynthia, what are you loving about the new normal that you don't want to change?
Well, I love the digital world in publishing, and it's been a wake-up call for most everyone, especially my age and older, because we like that magazine that's paper that we can browse through in the bed at night and at the beach or whatever. But I've seen a large increase in the older people learning to do more things digitally and being just as satisfied with it as they were the paper copy. Our digital entries, people who are signing up for digital magazines, is much greater than people who are now signing up for the paper issue. So I think people are getting more oriented towards the digital world, and that it's a good thing. We even have conferences now that are digital. You get the same number of credits that you would get if you were there in person. We're just missing out on that personal relationship building. So we still have opportunities to do some of that with live conferences coming back, but the digital is still important because there are a lot of people who are still afraid to get in crowds. So I think that's been a wake-up call for us. We can do almost anything digitally now that used to be never thought of. You don't have to give it up. You can go online.
Well, and I just found out that I could order my Girl Scout cookies online.
I love it. Isn't that right? Yeah.
And so now I am convinced we can do everything online.
That's right. That's right.
I can get my Thin Mints online. I know anything is possible. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Great point. All right. We are going to do a speed round at the very end, but I wanted to pause for any types of questions or comments from the chat box because I don't want to miss that opportunity to engage with the ladies that have joined us as well. So Patricia, do we have anything in the chat box that is a question or someone would like to ask of one of our panelists?
Yes, we do. And actually, Candace is handling our chat questions.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Candace.
All right. So
do we have it?
Yeah, hello, hi. So I do see one so far, and I will ask it of all you ladies. When technology is a challenge for candidates, how do you overcome that when you need to interview virtually? So this is for when the employer needs to interview virtually, but the candidate may have a technology challenge.
You know, I think we've talked about this a little, and that's going to be a little bit of preparation for the candidate. And if they know they're going to be having trouble, they should know it at least a day ahead of time and either notify the interviewer, look, there's an ice storm and I don't have internet, don't know what tomorrow's going to be. If it's simply a glitchy thing, this is going to sound terrible. Go to Starbucks. They've got free internet, and there's one on every corner. You should be able to mute enough around you that you can do it, or at least tell them, my internet went out at home and I apologize for you, but I'm sending in my local Starbucks. But again, you should know a day ahead of time if there's going to be a technology problem, I would think, from our standpoint.
And I just think from a technology challenge standpoint, if it's outside of an event out of your control, but someone just hasn't had the opportunity to become comfortable in technology. There are, you know I'm going to I'm aging myself a little bit, but your local library. Go to your local library and talk with someone there who is likely available that can help walk you through, especially setting up on one of their computer systems there. And then, of course, if someone has a teenage or college age child or niece or nephew or friend next door has one of those, grab them, if, of course, as a parent, but ask them if they can help you out. I think it's, super reasonable. People are understanding. I have helped people before interviews make sure that they felt comfortable with the technology that we were using. We use a common platform, but not everyone uses it. So I think, being gracious with your time for candidates is important too as an employer.
Great. Any other questions, Candace?
There are not any currently in the chat, but for everyone listening, go ahead and ask your questions in the chat, and we'll come back to them again after this speed round.
Okay, here's our speed round. I was reading an article this morning, and I think it's one that's all going to sound familiar with us, and that is the issue with work-life balance in a remote environment. So I'm going to ask each of you, just one at a time, just one trick or thing that you have learned that is helping you to establish that work-life boundary or balance in working in the virtual world. Who wants to go first?
Christine.
Well, thank you, Dotty. Setting expectations. Having that conversation in advance before it even becomes an issue. Setting and then also clarifying. So setting expectations is one piece, and then clarifying or resetting expectations. Don't be afraid to do that. It's very proactive, and it can save a lot of heartache and frustration.
Good call. Dotty.
I think work-life balance pushes me to stop answering emails after 10 o'clock at night. It's way, see, you got it, Amity. There you go. I think we set our own imbalance for those of us who love what we do, and we don't want to miss anything. And so you're sitting there watching your favorite show at night at 10 o'clock, and bing, there comes an email. I got to answer that now. We didn't answer it when we were in the office half the time.
Right.
So I think boundaries we need to put around ourselves to create some work-life balance. And the other piece is to have an understanding. I mean, I've got a wacky staff, but one of them's got a 7-year-old. And I told her at the same time I told when we were in the office, if there's a concert, if there's a meeting, go. You're not going to get this time back. Because I know if you're working from home, we do what we do. We work longer hours at home than we ever did in the office because it's so darn convenient to sit there in your fuzzy slippers and your pajamas with your laptop in your lap and answer emails at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night. So you got to put some boundaries around yourself.
Okay, Cynthia.
Well, I love that you can actually do your laundry and work at the same time. And I love that I can go start dinner and then come back to my office and do another hour's work. And then I come down and dinner's ready. Whereas before, stop by the supermarket. I mean, we all have these challenges being females. The guys don't seem to worry about it too much. But I think that's really made life easier for women, especially that we can take 5 minutes and go do a menial task that used to be huge when we came home from work and we were so tired and so ready to just have a bite to eat and jump in bed. We're able to balance that work now, the homework, work from home, as well as our jobs and our professions, and keep it all in context.
That's a great way to put it, Cynthia. So just make the best of it because now you have more flexibility. Your boundaries might be a little skewed, but skewing those boundaries is giving you the ability to move in and out of both of those worlds to do what you need to do. Great point. All right, Candace, any final questions?
So I don't see any questions here. I think there was a request for Christine and Cynthia to include their company and information in the chat again. So if you could take a moment and do that. And then everyone, I think, is really excited about the information that you all have shared. And, you know, the excitement about doing laundry while you're working.
I know. I was just you all are crazy about your laundry.
Candace, there are 2 questions in the chat in the Q&A that didn't come to the chat. I just saw that.
Gotcha. Let's see. Hold on. And
Yolanda, thank you for joining us. It was Yolanda's first meeting today.
I see the Q&A. Sorry. Okay, there we go. Here's a question. Do any of you offer tutorials for technology workarounds and a link for a candidate that you're interviewing?
Great question.
I've not offered a link, but rather some instruction, just giving them some ideas on turning their camera and their mic, like checking their mic and their camera ahead of time, reaching out to me. If they don't have someone else that they would like to practice with, I make myself available to do so. But that's a great idea with just recording a tutorial and sharing that.
That is. Because it also could probably include some preferences if there are any, right? So something to think about. Anybody else want to weigh in on that one?
And we have 1 more minute.
Okay, so the next one is hiring has been slowed or interrupted due to the number of calendars to coordinate with other hiring departments when advancing candidate interviews. This has caused us to miss out on talent due to delay. What is a way to mitigate that bottlenecking in the virtual hiring process?
Have more than one person who can interview. So you need to have a backup for a backup for a backup, because you're right, hiring is so fast these days and good candidates go off the market very fast. So you just need to be prepared to change your hiring practices to respond to a candidate-driven market.
Christine, I know you've had some experience with that as well, right?
Yes, and I say ditto, exactly what Dotty said. I think we have to remain flexible, and that means pivoting quick. We've talked about that even in the resilience playbook that the chamber published, is making sure that we aren't kind of stuck in our ways that we believe this is the best way. I've had, leaders and hiring managers like to continue to do it the way we've always done it, but we just can't.
Right. That's a great point. I think that the new chamber shirt is what Dotty said. Because we do find ourselves saying that a lot around here, what Dotty said. Well, I just want to thank all of our panelists today. You were amazing. I wish that we need to do this virtually, not for work, but for fun. I love the comments in the boxes. Many of you were attending your first chamber meeting ever. So welcome. We hope you come back. There's so many opportunities to engage, and you can see it's even fun in the virtual space. So it's been my honor and my pleasure to moderate today. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amity, and all of our panelists. I'm going to toss it over to our co-chairs.
Sure. I just want to say thanks to everyone again, and also thanks to Independent Bank once more for sponsoring us. And, I really encourage all of you to tap in to the women on this panel, but also into each other, and really reach out and talk to each other, look at each other as resources. Feel free to reach out to me, to Candace, to anyone on the chamber team with ideas or questions. We want to tailor these sessions so that they're the most useful to you. And so we can't do that without hearing from you. So if you've got an idea, throw it at us and we'd love to hear it. And again, thanks so much for coming today.
All right, thank you all. Our event will be quarterly moving forward, so please look at memphischamber.com to stay abreast. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.